Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I learn how to act appropriately at work because I don't know how to. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Terrifying Thursday. Yes, back once again on our new scheduled TEDx Day, Thursday, TEDx Day. Unless I decide to do one somewhere else in the week. But you never know. At least you can be assured that on Thursday there'll be a TEDx. You know what I appreciate most in relationships? You know what I strive for, both to enact and encourage, whether the relationship is a friendly one, a professional one, or a romantic one? Honesty, truth, and honesty. I don't think you can have a really solid relationship without honesty. So when I saw the title of this presentation, 4 tips to kickstart honest conversations at work, I had to ask myself, who needs tips on how to be honest? I mean, that presupposes something, doesn't it? 4 tips on how to have honest conversations at work. So people at work are just being perpetually dishonest? Or what kind of conversations are we talking about? I don't know. But, like I say, I strive for honesty. So any advice I can find to help me be more honest, especially at work, in conversations, you got me. I'm there. I'll totally want to find out. But before we get there, who is joining me on this journey of honesty and concession today? That would be Cultist 4, hello. Mr. E, hello. Some Namnyon Nation, hello. Dr. Keeve, hello. Check Your Logic, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. Lissa Leo, hello. Black Belt for Christ, hello. And then chat jumped because, of course, it does. And then it starts there. Dina B, hello. Shio Garath, hello. Zach Osborne, hello. Deco, hello. Ryan R, hello. Zalbla, hello. Frosted Glass, hello. Donanator, hello. Dr. Plague, hello. Devil Fruit Zero, hello. Professor Chaos, hello. This is Kyle, thank you so much. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. K. Scholl, hello. Lexi Mads made it. Oh, thank goodness. Zeke Weiss, hello. Jose Chacon, hello. Robert Pincus, hello. Tux Mint, hello. Perfect Pitch, hello. Megan Ring, hello. I think that's everybody, at least at present. So hello, everyone. All right, so let me stretch out all the creaks and cracks in my body. I got to get myself ready for honesty. Got to get myself ready for honesty. I need to be honest. I want to have an honest conversation, unlike all those deceptive and deceitful conversations I usually have. Per the poll on, I was about to say the poll on TEDx. Well, it is a TEDx poll on Twitter. Today's bingo card is card C. C as in constipated. Sure, why not? It's a C word. You'll find links to the bingo cards in the description below. Get your bingo card ready. Let's see. So this clocks in at just over 9 minutes, so not the longest TEDx. Oh, sorry. I take it back. I was wrong. This isn't a TEDx. I mean, it says right on the screen. This is an actual TED Talk. This is the creme de la creme, everyone, or so I'm told. Anybody listening and who has listened to previous TEDx talks, will we be able to tell the difference in quality of either ideas or discretion? I suppose we'll find out. But all that being said, I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and then we will proceed. Did you hear the canned applause track there? Let me know if you did. That's enough of a sound test, I think, to verify whether it's working. Let's see. Dr. Keeve, well, Chromosome Lady was an actual TED Talk. That is true. That is true. Chromosome Lady was indeed an actual TED Talk. Sounds good, says Megan Ring. Heard it, says some Namnyon Nation. Andrew Joyner, TED Talks meant to be more credible. The idea, as I understand it, is that TED Talks have a higher bar of qualification. TEDx Talks are created and organized by independent groups that get to use the TEDx branding for their event and their speeches, but they're not official TED Talks. So again, as I understand it, TED Talks have a higher bar for qualification. But let's decide for ourselves.
I have 2 teenage boys.
Okay.
One is 16 and one is 13.
Mm-hmm.
And like most families with multiple children, they are completely different.
Yeah.
Both are wonderful and have many great qualities about them.
Okay.
However, what really sets them apart is that my older son knows when to bite his tongue, and my younger son, not so much.
You encourage your children to harm themselves with their teeth? Oh, no. Okay, so your older son has a filter or a sense of discretion, and your younger son hasn't gotten there yet. Okay. I'm just letting that sink in for a second. And then?
You see, my younger son really struggles with having a filter, especially when it comes to speaking up and saying exactly what's on his mind.
Okay.
About 3 years ago, a bunch of kids and adults in the neighborhood had come together to work through a big conflict.
Okay.
The kids were basically at war with each other.
Over what?
There was lots of tears, screaming, shouting, and I felt like we would never get to a resolution.
What was the problem?
When we were in the height of everything, my younger son, in the most calm, clear, matter-of-fact tone, turned to another child and said, "You know you were lying. You know that's not what happened. It's time to come clean and tell everyone the truth."
Okay. Okay. Just as a note for those of you that might not know, I will pause the video, even if I don't necessarily have anything really amazing to say, because the gist is I have to be able to show that this is a transformative work. I can't let the video run too long. I don't know what the level is of content, matching or anything else before I'll get dinged. And I have been dinged in the past by TEDx or TED. But just on the safe side, in case there's any, question in the future of such a broadcast, I am commentating, and this is transformative, and this is fair use. So there you go.
The entire group stopped. They could not argue with him. They could not dispute him. His manner of delivery was so real and so honest.
Really? No one could dispute him. What was the... Okay, if you don't tell me what the conversation's about. Anyway, I've neglected the bingo card and focusing on the talk. I'm going to circle free space and childhood or family anecdote, because that's effectively what we have here. So free space, childhood or family anecdote, and I'm getting ready to circle leaves out vital context, because I don't know how to assess this anecdote in the absence of knowing what the heck it's about. I can't say it's an anecdote that never happened, because I don't know enough to make that judgment, but we'll see.
And I remember feeling really proud of him in that moment, because he had the courage and the confidence to speak up.
Okay.
And that moment started getting me thinking, why, as a society, have we created this fear to speak up, especially in a group of our peers or our coworkers?
Why do we have a fear as a society to speak up? Is that a societal fear? I mean, I suppose these days with social media, as we have seen quite dramatically in the last 24 hours, if you happen to be a Star Wars fan, speaking your mind is a dangerous prospect these days. Things are so polarized. People are so tribalistic in their thinking that anybody who strays off the ranch by even a foot or two now becomes a pariah. So I guess with the advent of cancel culture and the divisiveness of our politics, speaking up can cause some pretty negative consequences, even if you're not doing anything wrong, but simply speaking your mind. So I guess on that score, she might have a point.
Wouldn't it be amazing if you could tell your boss that project deadline she put out there is completely unreasonable?
Why can't you? Why can't you do that? That's okay. We've gone from society to the workplace. What does that have to do with anything? Somebody puts a deadline on something. Why couldn't you say that's not reasonable?
And what about being able to tell a coworker that they're being really difficult?
Yeah, well, good luck trying to say that in the workplace these days, because difficult is just a code word for fill in your ism, and that just leads on to a lawsuit or some kind of harassment complaint. So, I mean, if you find a way to cure the paranoia that has been drummed up in the last several years over saying anything that might be critical of someone else and them not turning it around into some kind of attack or lawsuit worthy or fireable offense territory, I'm all ears, but I'd be surprised.
Now, I know some of you are lucky enough to be able to work in places that value that kind of openness and honesty. However, in my work as a leadership and organizational coach, I have to tell you that is not the norm.
You're a leadership and organizational coach. Okay. So you do this for a living. All right.
I've observed hundreds of scenarios and coached multiple people through situations where they are afraid to speak up.
Yes.
They're afraid to have those honest conversations out in the open, especially when they're needed the most.
Okay, so honest conversations like the deadline you've put in place is too soon for us to get the work done, and you're being difficult. You still need to describe to me why you can't have, quote unquote, that conversation. Why can't you tell your boss that the expectation does not meet reality? Why can't you tell your coworker they're being difficult? Or, I mean, honestly, if I had a coworker who was being difficult, I wouldn't probably go to the coworker and make it a personal thing. I'd probably go to HR, go to their supervisor and leave an anonymous tip or note or something if it was something really important. That's usually the way to do it. That's the professional way to do it most times. Not all times, most times. All right, so if you're not going to describe the problem, how are we supposed to overcome it?
And you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're in a meeting, somebody pitches an idea, not everyone agrees, but no one says a word.
Okay, I don't know that that's a common occurrence. You need to give me an active example. You need to give me a situation. I can't assess what you're saying because it doesn't sound reasonable to me. Now, maybe I've just been lucky. Maybe I've just been lucky. I'm trying to recall a time where a boss set an expectation for me that was unreasonable that I didn't then come back and say, it's going to take longer. I mean, admittedly, I've been in the same company for a long time now, so yeah, usually, well, I mean, a good leader asks, depending on the circumstances, of course, what's the timeline on you getting this done? You know, because I work in IT and development and stuff like that. So usually go and say, what's your time to completion on this particular task? And the person being asked, knowing the work and knowing how long it takes them to do X, Y, Z, usually can give you an estimate. You know, aside from that, but okay. I'm circling leaves out vital context. That's a long way of saying I'm circling leaves out vital context, because between the story that didn't make any sense for the sample that she's using and for the problem that she's describing not making any sense. Okay.
And then about 2 seconds later, somebody picks up their cell phone and begins sending a text message to somebody else in the same meeting, telling them how stupid the idea is.
Are you speaking from personal experience or something? This sounds very close to home.
And let's not forget the proverbial water cooler conversations. As soon as the meeting is over, they rush over to a peer or a group of coworkers, probably near a water cooler, and offer all kinds of opinions about that meeting. But
okay. Are those conversations not honest? I mean, if you're in a meeting, somebody gives a bad idea. Is it dishonest to tell them it's a bad idea? Are you just being, I don't know, diplomatic? Are you trying not to stir any trouble? I mean, if it's a bad idea and nobody decides to act on it or gets set aside, then, what's the harm? What's the point in coming out in the meeting and saying, that's a stupid idea, that's a bad idea? Maybe you need to sit on it. I don't know. This is also abstract. And does anybody really talk around the water cooler anymore about anything other than what happened on the last episode of, Name Your TV series or whatever?
There are all kinds of opinions about that meeting.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it's after the meeting instead of during it.
Okay.
So I'm on a mission.
Yes.
I want to stop the passive aggressive texting and start bringing the water cooler conversations front and center.
The passive aggressive texting. You want to stop I don't know if you know what the utility of texting is, but it's usually to gripe. It's usually to vent. It's usually to have a release valve for that which you can't say out loud a lot of the time. So good luck with that one. As far as wanting to bring the water cooler conversation into the meeting, do you think that's going to be really that constructive? Do you think that's really going to be a good use of everyone's time?
I believe when we can start to have these types of conversations, it will change the dynamics of how we all work together.
Oh, you're absolutely right. If you take out the filter of professional distance between an official meeting and an off the clock kind of conversation, you will definitely change the dynamic in the workplace. I assure you, you're correct.
We'll become more productive, less fearful, and even happier at work.
Really? Okay, again, all right. I'm backing up slightly. You're going to need to give me a comparative example. All right, you need to give me something more than just saying so. You need to give me an actual situation where that is true, because taking the kind of conversations that happen outside of an official meeting and bringing those into an official meeting, I mean, every workplace is different. Some workplaces operate completely differently person to person, and you can be that casual. You can be that open. You can be that unfiltered, let's say. But most of the time, not really. And on the one hand, you were praising your son for knowing when to hold his tongue, but you were, I don't want to say criticizing, but you were sort of like, I don't know, disappointed or irritated with your younger son who didn't have a filter. So you want to take off the filter in the workplace, and this will lead to more productive, happier workers. Is this like bringing your whole self to work?
Now, I often get asked, how do you muster up the courage to have those kinds of conversations, especially if you're not in a leadership position or you work in a place that does not value that kind of openness and honesty?
Does not value that openness and honesty. Is there a workplace that doesn't value honesty? Is there a business amongst its workers that encourages deception and lies? Okay. I mean, law firms, brokerage firms. Okay, never mind. I take it back.
And for me, it comes down to a combination of four things. Confidence, intent, delivery, and always striving to seek a solution.
All right, we have a list. I knew we'd have a list because the title said so, but we got to the list. All right, I want to back up again and get those one at a time so I can take them one at a time.
It comes down to a combination of four things.
Yes.
Confidence.
Confidence. Okay, so if I don't have the confidence to be honest at work, the first thing I need is confidence. All right, you can tell us how to gain confidence? Thank you, Pecoraro, the Driving Ape Man, for the communistic thumbs up. And Dr. Keeves says, mind reading. Mind reading assumes motives. Yeah, you know what? Between the passive-aggressive texts and this, that, and the other, and people lying and nobody says anything, therefore they must be withholding something. Sure. Mind reading assumes motives. So far on the board, we have leaves out vital context, mind reading assumes motives, free space, a list, and childhood or family anecdote. Let's go over the others real quick. Marginalize, marginalization. No. Collectivize his own demographic. No. Feminism, no. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, not yet per se. I mean, you could say the passive aggressive, but microaggressions are different. They are person to person. Anecdote that probably never happened. I can't assess the anecdote that she gave because she didn't tell us any information about it. So I'll leave in that one. Contradicts own point or argument. I mean, I'm almost wanting to circle that one just on the basis of her critique of her children at the top, saying that her older boy knew when to hold his tongue and her younger boy didn't have a filter. But now she's saying that not having a filter at work is actually the preferable scenario. But then I don't know if her comparison of her kids at the top was meant to highlight the older kid is better then. So I don't know. I'm confused. We'll take that one up later. Diversity and inclusion. She's used a couple of, she's gotten close to the inclusive argument with, where that kind of honesty and directness is not appreciated or something. There's hinting at it, but not there yet. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. No. Plays victim. She hasn't really talked about herself. I mean, I can assume that some of these scenarios she's mentioned has been self-referential, but I can't say that they are because she hasn't mentioned herself yet. Word salad, no. Benevolent condescension, not yet. Patriarchy, no. Wage gap, no. Systemic institutional. She talked about society and society sort of, stopping people from speaking up. So I'll call that systemic institutional, sure. Privilege, no. Self-vilification or wretchedness, no. She hasn't really brought herself up again yet, except for her family, but not her. Equity, no. Weightless example. The anecdote with her kid and the neighborhood fight, I can't tell if it's a weightless example because she appreciated the honesty. I guess it does lead into it so far, so I won't circle that one. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. Not yet, if at all. White supremacy, no. Okay, so leaves out vital context, mind reading, free space, a list, systemic institutional, childhood or family anecdote. Okay, so the 4 tips in order to have these conversations first is confidence, which I already lack because I'm not having these conversations. Intent. Confidence, intent. C-I, okay, just in case it spells out something. I guess, yes, in order to have a conversation with someone, you must have the intention of conversing with them.
Delivery.
Okay, yeah, every stand-up comic and UPS worker can agree on that one.
And always striving to seek a solution.
CIDS. There is a homonym to how that might be pronounced that is definitely not a happy thought. So, okay.
So let me break this down for you.
I will. Okay.
The first one is confidence.
Yes, I see that. Ooh, it's a superhero. Yes. Okay. Confidence. Uh-huh.
And I know easier said than done.
Yes.
However, I have a little trick that I hope will help you. The next time you're in a meeting and you want to speak up, but you're feeling a little nervous or anxious, I would recommend you use what I call the Captain Obvious strategy. The Captain Obvious strategy.
Okay, coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, what I call the Captain Obvious strategy. All right, what is the Captain Obvious strategy for speaking up when I lack confidence in a meeting?
It goes something like this. Call me Captain Obvious, but isn't that solution not really going to address our problem?
Call me Captain Obvious. That's your solution. To insulate yourself from your lack of confidence, predicate your statement, question, whatever, with call me Captain Obvious. I mean, I guess it could work for some people so that they don't come across as, wait, call me Captain Obvious. I'm trying to think of that actually being used in a real world situation and how that wouldn't come across as belittling of the person. Like, I noticed this because obviously, you think that would work? Do you think that would work?
By saying Captain Obvious out loud, it basically adds a little humor to the moment, but it also does a check of the room to see if anybody else is hearing, seeing, or feeling the same things.
Or it makes you sound pretentious, almost condescending. Call me Captain Obvious, because whatever the person just said was so blatantly wrong that I don't know that that's necessarily... Maybe it is a confidence booster. I don't know, but I don't think that's going to necessarily lead to a happier, more productive workforce. Depending on your delivery, it could come across as insulting. But anyway.
And by having that confidence to speak up, you then open the door to allow others to have that same confidence.
Okay, yeah, but it doesn't sound like you're confident when you say that. It sounds like you're arrogant. That's arrogance, or at least the air of arrogance. And short of the speaker or the other people in the meeting being mind readers, which I'm assuming they're not, they could easily take you as being an arrogant know-it-all for that one. And also being condescending or passive-aggressive towards the speaker. So I'm going to have to put a X to doubt on the usefulness of that piece of advice.
Now, you don't always have to say Captain Obvious out loud.
Then what's the point of the Captain Obvious method?
You can say it quietly in your head right before you speak up.
Well, I'll admit that would probably be a better idea. But then what's the point of the Captain Obvious method?
Kind of like you're mentally pumping yourself up before a big game.
And Captain Obvious is the only option you came up with? No other sort of mental cues or other encouraging thoughts you could have besides sounding like an arrogant jerk? Okay.
Regardless of how you use the strategy, confidence is the first step in all of this.
Yeah.
So let's move on to intent.
Uh-huh.
Intent is about having a purpose and a reason to speak up.
Yes.
Intent is about knowing and understanding that by me speaking up, I either want to work through a problem or address a situation.
Yes.
For example.
Okay. Example? Oh my God. Is this going to be a real example or a convenient example or an abstract example that doesn't tell me anything? Dr. Keep contradicts own point, Scribe Light. Maybe. Let's wait. We're only halfway through this thereabouts. She's got a couple of things in there for possibly contradicts own point, but I want to have her keep going.
For example, when someone's being really difficult in a meeting and I call them out on it, my intent is not to embarrass them.
Yes, it is. Well, okay. How do you call them out? If someone's being difficult in a meeting, how do you do it? How do you address that situation? By what method do you, quote unquote, call them out? Because calling somebody out for being difficult, it sounds like you're trying to shame them. You know, at least in some measure, you're attempting to bring to the forefront your disapproval of their behavior in front of the group. So how are you not? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pecoraro, the driving ape man. Captain Cuntaroo, maybe? What? Well, if that's not a confidence booster in your brain, I don't know what else could be. Okay. You're not meaning to embarrass them. Yeah.
My intent is not to embarrass them.
Yes, it is.
My intent is to make them aware that their behavior is putting a strain on the group.
How does that not conceivably, it doesn't necessarily inherently, but how does that not conceivably lead to embarrassment? I mean, you may not have the intent for it to happen, but it certainly could happen. So admittedly, you can't necessarily be held to account for what someone else decides to feel about what you say, despite your intent. But calling someone out is, at least as far as my interpretation goes, meant to embarrass and or shame someone based on their behavior and your interpretation thereof. But okay, so your intention is not to embarrass them.
For my son, his intent was that the truth be heard.
Yes.
He wasn't just calling the other child a liar out of spite.
That's not a necessary component to embarrassing someone or to shame them. He was accusing that kid of being a liar. Whether he was a liar or not, I don't know. But the intention was to shame that kid into compliance and to tell the truth. That's why you would do that. So, I mean, maybe there was no spite intended. Maybe there was no maliciousness. I can't tell because the way you framed the story, it sure sounded like your kid was angry. But shaming that kid into telling the truth was the entire point. Now I'm going to circle contradicts own point or argument, because that's just, yeah, that's a bit too much to bear on that one.
Well, at least I don't think he was.
What? Wait a second. Whoa. Wait a second. Wait. Okay, I'm backing up. What?
The group. For my son, his intent was that the truth be heard. He wasn't just calling the other child a liar out of spite. Well, at least I don't think he was. He was only 10 at the time, so I could be wrong.
Oh. Yeah, okay, well, if I needed a better example of contradicts own point or argument, there you go. The wisdom of 10-year-olds. So you're praising your 10-year-old son for his forthrightness, but you're not sure about his motives because he was 10 and you're not a mind reader. But you're pretty sure he wasn't trying to shame that kid, even though at 10 he probably was. Okay.
However, his underlying intent was that the truth be heard so that we get to a resolution.
But you just said that the motive has to be pure, that your motive to call someone out is pure, even. Yeah, well, if I could circle contradicts own point or argument more than once, I would, but there you go.
I feel when you go in with a positive intent, it's much more likely that your message will be received with an open mind.
It all depends on the person, and it all depends on the what was the next step in the list?
All right, let's move on to the third step, which is delivery.
Yes.
Delivery is about how you frame the actual message.
Mm-hmm. Delivery
needs to be factual, real. And when I say real, I mean no sugarcoating what you're trying to say.
Okay. No sugarcoating what you're trying to say. Okay. Do you have an example? I dare I hope?
And it must always take the receiver's feelings into account.
You can't. You can't always take the receiver's feelings into account. I mean, you didn't take the receiver's feelings into account when you called them out for being difficult. Your intent was not to embarrass them, but certainly you probably could embarrass them. In fact, you probably would be better off as a professional speaking to that person outside of the meeting privately rather than embarrass them in front of the group. But your advice is to call somebody out in the middle of the meeting because you don't particularly like their attitude. You're a leadership coach again? That's what you do professionally?
Let me give you an example.
Oh, please.
Let's say you're working on a team and you know there's an individual who just isn't pulling their weight.
Okay.
Everyone knows it because you basically talk about this individual almost every day at the water cooler.
Well, if you're on a team, maybe you should talk to that person privately and be professional about it. Right? That's what you should do as a leader. Even if you're not the leader of the team, just a, participating coworker. Yeah.
But nobody wants to bring it up in the larger group setting.
Why? Why wouldn't they? Everybody else is doing their bit and this one person isn't. Why wouldn't they bring it up? Either to their supervisor or to the person in particular. Why?
Then after several weeks of grumbling and some serious loss in productivity, you finally decide we need to have a conversation as a larger group.
Why the larger group? It's not the larger group that is having the problem. What is the purpose of not confronting the person privately or going to their supervisor in the team? I mean, what is the team leader doing about this? Is the team leader oblivious to the lack of productivity of this individual? If it's been going on for weeks and people are grumbling? Because either the leader isn't paying attention or the leader doesn't care. And that's a whole other problem. But I guess I'm asking too many questions.
So let me show you how the delivery should look.
Okay.
Hey, team, we have not met any of our commitments over the past several weeks.
And whose fault is that? Is that the fault of the team members who are pulling their weight, or is it the fault of the one team member who's dragging everybody back? Why sound like you're lecturing the group for the misdeeds of one person? You think that's going to actually add to morale, or make it sound like everybody's responsible for this one guy's screw up?
Simple, direct,
and completely unnecessary.
No sugarcoating situation.
No sugarcoating. You just insulated the bad actor by putting everybody else under the bus for that one person. No sugarcoating? You let that guy get off scot-free. What are you talking about? You're a leadership coach. Okay.
And then you would continue.
Yeah.
Hey, team member, we've looked at the data and we've realized that you have not been able to meet your commitments over the past 3 sprints.
You have that conversation in private. You take that person aside in a review privately over the course of the project. You do not call them out in front of the entire group. That's not professional. That can lead to a harmful work environment or whatever they call it. You know, hell, they could probably even get you up on a harassment charge in the company for that. If you never, ever approach that person privately, and the only first time that you ever brought them up on that is in front of the entire group and singling them out as failing, wow, okay, that sounds like a bad idea.
Factual. We have the data to show these are our concerns and why we're having this conversation.
No. You're not having a conversation at that point. You're not having a conversation. Okay? You're putting somebody on trial in front of the entire group. You are shaming them. And even if you feel justified, it's not professional and it's not good business practice. If this has been happening for weeks, the leader should have taken that guy aside after the first signs of trouble and done a performance review of everyone. Sure, you want to insulate the whole thing and do a weekly performance review of each individual. If it's just a cloak to get to this one guy to make sure he doesn't feel singled out or that he's being like victimized, fine, that's perfectly legit. But you don't bring it up weeks after the fact in front of everyone like the freaking witch trial or something. Come on. Are you kidding me?
And now this is where we really want to take the receiver's feelings into account.
You haven't. How? You don't take their feelings into account when you ambush them during a group meeting with information that you've withheld from them for weeks. You have no chance to dodge or to even know what their feelings are going to be about that, because you haven't spoken to them privately. And this should be a private matter. What? I'm sorry.
We are concerned that you do not have everything that you need and that we need to do something better to support you.
Again, putting the blame on the rest of the team who are doing their part as though it's their responsibility to lift this guy up. It's not. Is he taking a paycheck every week? Is he an employee at this company? Was he hired for his skill set? He needs to pick himself up. And if there is something that's lacking, if there is something going on that he doesn't have, etc., you approach them privately first to assess what's going on. Maybe there is something that needs to be handled. Well, you're not pulling your weight. Why aren't you pulling your weight? Is there something we can do? And then the guy goes, I found out I have cancer last week. Oh shit, then what do you do? What do you do then? Or somebody died or something. What do you do then? You never spoke to him privately, and all of a sudden he feels like he's got to give you an excuse as to why he's been doing badly. Well, how are you going to dodge that one? This is insane. This is terrible, terrible workplace advice right here. Terrible.
Empathetic, caring, and in my experience, it almost always works.
I would love to know the experiences in which it worked for you, because that sounds like a terrible, terrible strategy for dealing with an underperforming team member. It really does. I'm not being facetious. I am having an honest conversation. That sounds like the last thing you would do in a team setting as a team leader.
When we're able to have these types of conversations out in the open, it creates the environment so the team feels more confident to speak up.
Do they? Do they? They feel more confident to speak up. Really? I'm not following the train of logic on that one. If bringing up somebody's performance review in a group setting as the first step towards trying to solve a problem of carrying your own weight, if that's your first and foremost strategy, that encourages people speaking up? I must have missed that day in Psychology 101.
Up. And in my past experience, some of these teams have become some of the highest performing teams in the company.
What? I don't even know why I bother asking for specifics at this point. I reflexively want specifics.
Just by being able to have those types of conversations.
That's not... You were not describing a conversation. You were describing an ambush. You're describing a lecture. You're describing shaming someone publicly. That is the end effect of what you were describing. It's not professional. It's not productive. It does not engender trust amongst team members and a team leader. I don't know what side of the mirror you stepped out of, but that's not how that works.
Imagine that.
I'm imagining quite a bit.
Now let's move on to the last piece of this, which is always entering a conversation with a mindset of wanting to seek a solution.
Okay.
And for me, that's the piece that I see that is missing the most.
Okay.
How many of you have been in a meeting and you work through a problem, but you realize you spent the entire meeting hashing through the problem?
Well, how do you come to a solution if you don't understand the problem? How many times have I brought up that same kind of concept doing these TED Excellences? If you're going to offer a solution, you have to describe the problem you are seeking to solve. You have to compare and contrast what the situation is with how your solution would treat it. Okay, so when should you draw the line at trying to understand the problem before discussing a solution?
And then you get to the end of it and you need to schedule another meeting just to work through solutions.
Well, maybe it's a big problem. What are we talking about? If the problem was simply solved, then why would you have a meeting in the first place?
Yep, probably happens more than we'd like to admit.
Well, is that a sign of inefficiency of the company, or is it a sign of the complexity of the problem? You need to tell us what the problem is. Give us an I am reflexively saying that. I need to stop doing that. I have too high expectations for our speaker.
Let's say you're on a project and you know it's a problem. You've been slogging through it with no end in sight.
What problem?
So you call somebody into the room that's a little bit closer to the work, hoping that you can understand what the problems really are and work through a solution.
And what if the problem is more complex than just a two-person conversation? Well, then you have to have a team meeting so nobody feels left out. Nobody's like... Okay.
But they come into the room and this is what they say.
Okay.
This project is a disaster. We do not have the people, the skills, the resources, or the technology to get this done. And we're going to need to spend $1 million more before we see it to the end.
Whoa! Now that is some henny penny the sky is falling, isn't it? Okay. That's the assessment of your person who's closer to the work. Well, what do you do then?
And then they leave the room.
Yeah.
So just as an FYI, that's what I call a mic drop moment. And those moments are not productive.
Wait. You call that a mic drop moment and it's not productive. but ambushing an underperformer in a team meeting is productive and not a mic drop moment. Okay.
Now, I know that was an extreme example.
But is it a real example? Could you please at least give us one active real world example of what you're talking about? And not hyperbole. I mean, change the names, change the company, but at least give us a scenario that was literally true and how it worked out. I mean, even if it's self-serving, which I can't imagine it wouldn't be at this point, but even if it was self-serving as an example, why are you just talking in generalities? Why are you talking in abstractions or hypotheticals? Why?
However, mic drop moments like that happen every day at work. That's why it's so important that we come into a conversation with a mindset of wanting to seek a solution.
Well, was the guy lying in your example? Was he lying that the whole thing was screwed up, that it would take tons more money and people and so on? I mean, you just let the guy leave the room, right? He just comes in, dumps all that on you and leaves, and you don't ask any questions. You don't say, wait a second, get back here. Okay.
Even better, if you actually bring possible solutions to the conversation.
The guy just offered the solutions. He says you need more money, more people, more hours to get it done. It's not a very detailed solution, but that was his estimate. Now, do you want to take that guy on his word, or do you want to have a team meeting to discuss the problems with the project? Oh, and if that takes longer than one meeting, well, is it worth it doing more than one meeting or shelling out $1 million possibly? Which do you think is more productive for the company? Oh, Lordy.
That then creates a space to start to work through options.
And if working through those options takes more than one meeting because the problem is complex and $1 million worth of problem?
So if I could rewind that mic drop moment, I would hope and recommend the conversation would go a little bit more like this. We've come to realize we don't have the people, skills, resources, or technology in-house. That's why we're struggling so much on this project.
That's almost exactly the same message that was coming across from the first one. Okay, the attitude's definitely more professional. I will give you that.
I think if we were to use this external vendor who we know has this experience and has done this type of work before, we're going to be able to complete it and meet our goals.
So in the first scenario, the person comes in all Chicken Little, sky is falling. In the second instance, they say the exact same thing, except they offer an alternative solution. That's the big difference. What happened to you have a meeting, more than one meeting, trying to figure out the problem? So instead, you have one person come in, give you a high-level, abstract summary of what they see the problem is, and then they give you, we should get a different vendor. Okay. Maybe my brain's fried or something. These seem like completely different scenarios, don't they?
There. Possible solutions create possible options.
What if there isn't a solution? In the first scenario, the guy said, it'll take another $1 million and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You just changed, you moved the goalposts on this one. If there was a solution, if there was such an easily, readily available solution like you just described, the person running in who's closer to the work wouldn't have mentioned it. Just withholding that information. I mean, if you're going to have an honest conversation, I suppose lying by omission is a problem, sure, but this is just...
Now I know some of you may be saying this is a great concept in theory, but... No. Well, okay, I can't speak for everybody. There might be some people out there that think it's a great concept in theory, but I'm not one of them.
Not even in concept does any of this sound reasonable.
But will never happen or be accepted where I work. I would challenge you to change your thinking because there is power in speaking up.
I keep going back to the worker who wasn't pulling their weight. That's not speaking up. That's calling out. That's a public shaming. Seeing a problem, voicing that there is a problem, that's one thing. What you've suggested elsewise so far is just nonsense. And the scenarios you've brought up are ridiculous or completely self-serving without any details and completely in the abstract. Thank you, Andrew Joyner. Lack of examples and specificity equals vague as fuck. I know, I can't. Anyway, we're almost done.
9 times out of 10, if I'm thinking it, I bet at least one other person in the room is having that same thought.
Oh, so now you are a mind reader. Okay.
And the beauty is that once it's said, that's when the real conversations start to happen.
Oh.
Look at my son. I believe he was able to change an entire group dynamic just because he had the courage and the confidence to speak up. The best.
Are you sure he had the courage and confidence? I mean, he was only 10. And you couldn't assess his intentions earlier, but now you know what was in his heart? Okay.
Organizations are full of people at all levels that have that same courage to tackle the tough topics. And by being open and honest, not only are we helping ourselves, but also our organizations to have these conversations. And those are the ones that are needed the most.
Like the public shaming of an employee without knowing the ins and outs of what their issue is? Okay.
Call me Captain Obvious.
Oh, God.
But isn't that the kind of place that you want to work in?
Okay, I'm cutting it there in case that musical... She'll say thank you, and then it'll cut off, and yeah. Okay, wow, that was ridiculous and frustrating to listen to. If you couldn't tell in my intention and in my delivery. Okay. With that, let's go over to the bingo card and see where we're at. This is where we're at right now. I'm going to go over it once myself. If you guys have any arguments for squares that should be circled, hold on to them for a moment. I'll get to you presently. Marginalize, marginalization. I mean, if I was being very generous, I could say that, you know, people who lack confidence are effectively marginalizing themselves, or society is preventing people from speaking up, therefore everyone's being marginalized. I'll hold on that one. I think I might be stretching a bit too far. Collectivize his own demographic. She never brought up her being a woman or her being anything in particular. So she never brought up a demographic as far as her own experience is concerned. So I'm challenged to think that that one applies. Feminism, no. She never brought up gender or sex or anything else. Microaggressions, unconscious bias. There was a lot of, you know, people holding back, not saying what they should and so on, or delivery, and that there's since this whole thing was abstract, in a very abstract way, she was talking about unconscious bias, even if it is self-defeating unconscious bias, if you get what I mean. So I'm going to circle that one. Anecdote that probably never happened. None of her anecdotes had enough information for me to say that they never happened. It's entirely possible that her younger son did accuse someone of being a liar in some kind of weird neighborhood feud. But in the absence of knowing what the supposed scenario was, I can't say that it never happened. And every other example that she gave came across as a complete hypothetical. So, yeah, I can't circle that one. Diversity and inclusion, no. I mean, there was some inclusive language there, that kind of thing, but it was very tenuous to make that connection. Plays victim. I mean, she talked about herself having been in meetings where things went that and the other way, and like, you know, too many meetings trying to discuss the problem. I don't really see that as playing the victim. I don't know. Word salad. I mean, I understood everything she was saying, even if it was contradictory and so on. But yeah. Benevolent condescension. I'm circling benevolent condescension because the way that she was oversimplifying everybody and assuming everybody's motives and all that kind of stuff. And like, people really wouldn't act that way or somehow lacking complete, like everybody's lacking confidence. We just can't have these conversations. Like, really? Are you sure about that? Patriarchy, no. Wage gap, she never brought up pay. Privilege, no. Self-vilification or wretchedness. Again, she raised her hand once or twice to say that she'd been there as far as whatever she was talking about, but that's, she didn't make herself into a villain or somehow, belittle herself. Equity, no. Weightless example. I mean, the calling out the underperforming employee, that to me, I mean, I'm still stuck on that one because it is so insane to think that that is your first stop in the process. And as far as like an example towards how you're going to make a more productive, happier, and open working environment, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. So I'm circling that one. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I'm trying to think if she ever came up with some kind of non sequitur. I can't think of one. And white supremacy, no. So that's the card as I have it, guys. If you have any squares that you think should be circled, tag me in a comment in the chat now, and I will consider them. Let's see. Dr. Keeve, I was about to ask if you were okay over there, Scribe. Yeah. I tell you, my brain is still caught on that calling out in front of the group thing. I have had workplace conflicts, let's say, where I tried to handle. Okay, I'll just give the exact example. All right, just for reference, because I'm trying to think of like the most dramatic instance where something like this happened. So at one point, many years ago now, I had to be on a call with one of our sales guys who I barely knew. Okay, and we were calling I guess the best way to put it, a public institution for information. Okay, that was relevant to our business process, and this was a civil servant kind of situation. So we're calling this person to ask them for information that we need to sort of help along what we were doing. And the salesman, the guy I was sitting next to the phone with, started talking to this guy like he was a bad behaving vendor. Okay. And this person wasn't a vendor. This person wasn't being paid by us. They were a civil servant. Now their job is to obviously serve civilians, but he was talking to this guy like he was his boss or the guy had done something wrong. And I'm just in horror. I'm in absolute horror listening to him talk to this guy this way. Because when you're talking to people who work in the public sector, if you get on bad terms with them, most of the time they are in those jobs for years. So if you get bad blood between you as an entity and that person, you could sour any relationship you could possibly have, not only with that person, but that entire organization for years to come. So I am just sitting there going like, what are you doing? But I didn't say anything to him on the call. Okay. I did my best, as I was also on the call, to ratchet things down a bit and de-escalate and try to be the voice of reason. Anyway, after this call, I went to my supervisor privately and I described to him the situation. And I said, if this sales guy, if that's the attitude he's taking with people in this circumstance, then when he's out there alone doing things, I have concerns about how he might be interacting with other institutions out there. And my boss said, okay, I want you to write everything down you just told me, put it into a memo, give me a copy, give a copy to his supervisor, the business manager guy, and then we'll see what happens. Like, okay. So I go just very plain, no emotion, just the facts, ma'am. Joe Friday, do a little memo, on this date, had this call, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I think it'd be I put in the memo, I think it might be advisable, since I communicate with these institutions more often than anybody else, if I just had a meeting with the whole sales team to give them advice on how to best communicate with people in these situations. That way, nobody's being targeted, and it's useful information that maybe the salespeople as a group just don't have. That was my offer. And so I take this memo off to the business manager guy, the guy in charge of the sales. And he has me sit down, and I go, even though he has the memo, he has me talk to him, and I go over with him what had happened. And he says, okay, I'll think about it. Like, okay. The next day, as I'm getting ready to go out for get my morning cocoa, as I usually do, I usually go around the office and ask people, do you want something from Starbucks, that kind of thing. The sales guy, the first time this guy has ever come up to me in the morning for anything, he comes to me and says, hey, can I go along with you? And I'm like, okay. So I already have an inkling of what's about to happen. But we walk over to the Starbucks, we order the drinks, I get the drinks, and then before I can walk out the door, he says, hey, let's sit down for a second. And I know where this is going, but I sit down anyway. And he says, so, our manager, Bob, he said that you had a problem with what I said on the phone call the other day. So here I am sitting in Starbucks, all these people around me, with the guy that I just, levied professional criticism to managers, and he's sitting down here confronting me about it. And I knew immediately that Bob, the manager, had told him directly what had happened and who said it. He ratted me out. And now here I am having a very uncomfortable conversation. And I looked at him, I said, I'm not really comfortable talking about this here right now, so I'm just going to go back to the office. And I went back to the office, and I went to my supervisor, and I told him what just happened. And it was like a nuclear bomb went off, and it became this huge drama, rightfully so, because the sales manager guy just completely dropped the ball in how you handle a situation like that. The right solution was for me to schedule a meeting with the entire sales team and just go over some pointers on how to best communicate with people in civil service positions so that you don't sour relationships. But no. So that's what I'm drawing on in my own personal history when I hear this, our speaker, talk about calling somebody out in front of everybody like that. I'm like, no, that's wrong. It's wrong. Okay, I apologize for going off on that tangent, but I just thought it was necessary for context. Some emulation, word parfait maybe, Scribelight? No. Lexi Mad Scribelight, she collectivized her demographic because we are humans and we live in a society, and society apparently has a problem speaking up. Just because I know it won't get us to a bingo, but I appreciate that stretch. I'll circle that one. But props for the attempt. It's not wrong. It's not wrong. But thank you, Lexi. Some emulation. Didn't she marginalize workplace fuck-ups? No, I can't. I'm not going to make that jump. Assassin the Gay, Scribe Smash. I was pretty mad. I was pretty mad that day. That was not a fun day. Let's see. Nobody else. Yeah, I don't see any of the arguments. And honestly, I am challenged to think that any of the squares not yet circled were justified in anything that she had to say. It was a whole lot of bad advice, but I don't think we get a bingo out of this one. Let's see. Some emulation says Joe Friday gets all the credit. What about Bill Gannon? Well, yeah, but Bill Gannon wasn't known for just the facts, ma'am. I don't think so. Did Bill Gannon ever say just the facts? Because I thought that was the Joe Friday line. Anyway, everyone, I think we're going to call it there. It's a relatively short TEDx and consequently a relatively short review. In my summation, our speaker provided some very ill-framed advice for how to operate in a workplace environment. I don't think we heard so much about honest conversations as ill-advised conversations, if they can even be called conversations, because I think the better word would have been confrontations. But yeah, so there's my estimate there. But that all being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the both of us tonight on my channel, this channel, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where Satsu and I will go over the news of the day, news stories that you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, thank you again so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your participation and your argumentation. Those of you that donated, thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. As I know that the bad weather, cold weather is hitting a lot of the country right now, I hope everyone is warm. I hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.